All right, we are live. Welcome, y'all. Shawn Marshall in the house. This is the Navigating Change Summit because I just think there's so much change happening in the world right now, globally, and for people. We've all been going through it, I think, on some level since the pandemic,
Mhm.
and possibly you're going through it now. So I want to have some deep conversations about navigating change. So I'm excited for today's conversation with Kathryn Eipl. A brief snippet. I was going to give your acronym away, but I'm not going to. You're going to give it away. Kathryn's an emotional well-being and support coach and does so much serving people in so many different ways. So I'm excited to have you on the show. Kathryn, welcome. And can you take a moment and introduce yourself maybe a little more deep than I did?
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here. I'm happy to be a part of this Change Summit because like you said, it's very important. Like, we've all been going through a lot of things in the last 4 years since the pandemic, and in our society, we tend to kind of shy away from expressing them and talking about them. And I find a lot of power behind that. So, to talk a little bit more about what I do, as you said, I'm an emotional support coach. So, I use cognitive behavioral therapy practices to help people navigate the patterns in their life that they're not necessarily happy with. And then we'll work on implementing new patterns to create the changes that they want to see. And that's really boilerplate what CBT is about. And I also do energy work. So I do Reiki. I use sound healing techniques as well to help people get into deeper states of meditation. Because there's a lot of magic that can happen when you're in that theta and delta brainwave state. And I do yoga as well. And I work a lot. One of the changes, speaking of changes that we do, I work a lot in addiction recovery. So I work at a center called Villa Kalima in Carlsbad, which is a women's residential uh, 30-day transformational program. And then I also work at Scripps Hospital with their community members and then also their cancer patients and caregivers, doing restorative yoga and sound therapy for them. So it's a very beneficial practice no matter what stage or how your life even looks.
Powerful. God, you're doing a lot of different things. And then obviously the some of the patterns that you're where you're with addiction recovery or with scripts, your own business, but the sound healing that definitely seems like one of the things that we has you've woven throughout all or at least most of what you're doing, which that part's fascinating to me.
Actually, it did start with sound healing. So I think I might have mentioned when we first talked that sound healing was a way for me to work through some of my own addiction habits. I realized that I used to work in entertainment, so another change. I completely changed my career path. And when I was working in entertainment, I really did enjoy the work that I was doing. It got to a point where I was burnt out. And as part of seeking more, I turned to a substance, that substance being alcohol. And it was really easy because coming out of my office, there was a Carl Strauss right there. And so I would go and have drinks with, the guys after work, and we would talk more about work and plan more things. So I could justify as like, oh, it's for work. Like, this is part of the job now. Uh, and once I got back into a yoga practice, the yoga studio that I started going to had sound healing. And the first time I was exposed, I actually didn't like it. And then the owner of the studio was talking to me afterward, and she's like, just come again. I promise it's going to be different. And after that, I was hooked. And they
Wow.
started doing monthly sound baths at the studio, and I was always there. And then they started doing a yoga teacher training program. So I did that, and the more I got into yoga, the less I wanted to drink alcohol. And I was like, I had my yogic practices that I would do. And once I got certified to teach at the studio, we got keys to the studio because we were all teaching there. And the owner was really cool and gave us permission to use the studio at any point if there were no classes going. So when I got
Cool.
the urge to write, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Got the urge to drink, instead of driving to a bar, I would drive to the studio and start playing with the crystal singing bowls that the studio had. And I would record myself and watch it and just learn and refine the practice of how I even played. And so that was a
Wow.
constant for pulling myself out of the world of alcohol. And when I was in it, I wouldn't have said that I was addicted, but then learning about addiction and addictive habits, I most definitely was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you weren't conscious to being addicted at that point to alcohol, but you had it seemed like your pathway, the way I heard it, you're in the entertainment industry. You
Mhm.
said this to me offline, but in LA, correct? And that was a cool path for a while, and then you ended up burnt out. So it's like, okay, let's go to the bar after, drowned out the day, if you will. Alcohol became a coping mechanism. And in hindsight, you can look back and say, okay, I was addicted to it. And so that's really powerful that you start going to yoga. The teacher kept their promise and said, come back, it'll be different. And it clearly was. Like, what a powerful thing to say. And so then you start playing with the sound bowls, and that starts pulling you. It's interesting because I'm listening to as you're chatting. I don't even know what track this one is specifically, but yeah, I have sound frequency playing in my office. I do most of the day. I love sound.
Yeah, I do that too. I have a couple of different channels on Spotify that's just like Stefano frequencies at
Yeah,
different hertz, and I'll put it on when I'm working because it is a great way to help tune the body and the mind into something a little bit higher than what you might be focusing on. And what a lot of the work I do can be really heavy. So it's nice to have light frequencies playing in the background to help uplift the energy so I'm not just getting pulled down. So, yeah.
I'm with you. What for maybe for somebody who maybe doesn't fully understand. I don't know if I fully understand is a strong word, but I understand enough about the different frequencies and how that impacts the body. And but maybe for somebody who doesn't yet, can you just share a little bit about how does sound therapy, how does it impact the body? Like, what's the science behind that?
Yeah, there's so much, honestly, that I could talk
Yeah.
about. So feel free to stop and ask questions.
Okay, cool.
So, first and foremost, it helps to activate the alpha and theta brain waves, and that's the state right before REM sleep. So, when you're receiving a sound healing or a sound meditation, you may notice that you kind of have dips where you're going in and out of consciousness. And sometimes it can feel like you're dreaming or in like a trance like state because you can be aware that you're dreaming, so it's almost like you're like, I know I'm not dreaming, but it feels like I am, but there's something playing out in front of me, and you just open up to receive that because that's those it's the alpha wave that is also known as like the problem solving phase. So if you have something that you've been working on or something that's just been weighing on your heart, if you go into a sound meditation, of course not expecting like, oh, the answer of how I'm going to deliver this conversation to this person is going to come through. You're open to the fact that whatever comes through is what you need to receive. And as you're in the meditation, you may get some downloads or some insights as to how to have a difficult conversation with one of your friends, or if you're working on a new exciting business plan but you're stuck on a few aspects, like you might get clarity on the places that you're stuck. uh, so it can also be really helpful to have a notepad or a journal with you, or just something that you can like sit up really quick, take some notes, and come back to it. I've gotten random insights for my business when I've received sound healings and of things where I was like, oh, I didn't even know that I needed a new thing, but I have it. Like, um, and so the science, there's so much science behind sound therapy now and how it's been beneficial. So it helps to, if you have physical pain, it can help with the pain. It helps with inflammation because it shakes up. If you're in the same room, especially, the vibrations can help shake up the individual water particles within the cell. So it can actually restructure your cells, especially if you do it continuously, repeatedly. And it can help with pain, fatigue, nausea. So that's another reason why I work with cancer patients, is there've been a lot of research done about how Reiki and sound healing have been known to help with the symptoms that cancer treatment brings on. So the chemo and radiation, you often feel very tired, fatigued. You can get that like brain fog. You can get that nauseous, and like your body can start aching. So sound therapy helps with combat all of those symptoms. Um, and it's actually, they've done studies in hospitals that, for, I think it was a 3-year study that they did, where they studied patients and they gave them the choice of having a 1 hour massage or a 1 hour Reiki session just once during their entire treatment. And they found that the people that went with the Reiki actually healed faster. And they
Wow.
actually reported feeling less pain and less of their symptoms, they said, had diminished as a compared to the massage. So here you have someone who's like physically touching you, working on your pain points. And yes, they felt relaxed during and a little bit after, but overall the Reiki had more impact. And so they've started to do studies like that more with sound healing as well. And so they're starting to find a similar correlation with that, even if people are only receiving one session in a month.
It's really powerful. I dove deep into some of Joe Dispenza's work over the past couple years, gone spent some time with him live a few times. And
That
it
must have
seems
been
like what's that?
That must have been great to spend time with Joe Dispenza live.
Oh my God, it's incredible. It's some of the most powerful work I've done. And I've been in some great environments for the last like 17, almost 20 years. But what he's creating, I don't think it's all his, but one of the things that he is doing that's unique, he partnered with UC San Diego. So right where you're at, right where I'm from, and they're running all these studies, like 30 studies at a time in a live 7-day event. And you meditate uh, for like 35 hours in a week-long event, sound bath playing the whole time, not with gongs or bowls, but tracks that he's had created, I believe, or picked up on. And one of the things that has come out of it is I've seen with my own eyes, met people at these events that had spontaneous remissions of like stage 4 cancer, tumors. Had lunch. My wife and I had lunch this past time with just a random woman at lunch who had a massive tumor, spontaneously healed it through energy healing. And the way that I understand it is the the physical creation, like the cancer or the tumor or whatever, that's the physical display of what's in the energy field. And so
Mhm.
it's like we don't necessarily need to go to the site. It's more about looking at the pattern that's in the field, and we
Right.
correct the pattern that's in the field. And when we correct that pattern, it no longer expresses itself as a tumor or cancer or something like that. And so it's the field, it's the energy, and then we have sound waves and whatnot. That's fascinating to me too.
Yeah, I love things like that and hearing those stories. Uh, and Joe Dispenza talks a lot about that, especially in his books, about how he's worked with so many different clients who have had things like their husbands have passed, and then that led them to get terribly sick because they were left with two kids, and the stress of everything made them sick, and all the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on with them. And then once they started working with Joe Dispenza and addressing those deeper issues that are in the energy field and the emotional body, then the physical symptoms started to clear up, and the doctors are confused because it wasn't a medicine or a procedure that they're familiar with that, cured them. So I love that stuff. And it is true that what comes into our energy field, it attaches onto the emotional body first because that's what's outside of the physical body. And so if we address it before it comes to the physical body, that's great. The physical body will never even know. But if we keep trying to push down those emotions or pretend it's not there and try to carry the weight of the world, then it is going to manifest in a physical form, and that could be a tumor. Uh, and at that point, it's like, are you going to lean into all the science, or are you also going to open up that door and go into meditation and look for alternative ways? Because we are supernatural. We do have the power to heal our physical bodies, and there's so much evidence of that in the world now. Um,
Yeah.
so I think it's a really exciting time in our society because more and more people are waking up to that fact and are starting to realize that. And so the more examples that come up, I think is just more proof for people to really reaffirm their belief in themselves.
That's powerful. I love the way you say that. Reaffirm your belief in yourself and your own ability to heal. One of the things that they figured out too, this is a University of San Diego study. They they figured out essentially, because you mentioned medicine, like the doctor's like, well, how did medicine didn't do this? What did it? And they figured out that our brain has the ability. Dispenza calls it like a pharmacy. There's a pharmacy in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But in conjunction with the University of San Diego, during COVID, they took COVID patients or whatever, people who had COVID, and studied what the brain was doing. And they discovered that the brain, its inner pharmacy, it has the ability to create any single chemical that we would need. And it custom created uh, uh, a chemical, essentially a formula that was a cure for COVID
Wow.
in the people who had COVID. And this is not woo woo. This is University of San Diego tracked this, monitored it, figured it out. And here we are making a vaccine essentially right here in our brain, boop, going right after the source. And it's like, man, I just think, what if that was the message? Like how you just said it about like, rediscovering our own abilities. Like, man, what if that was the message that was coming over the airways? There's CNN and Fox and whoever else. Like, you're able to create the chemicals that you need to solve your own problems. Here's how you do it.
Yeah, I wonder if it was like, yeah, we've more people have been diagnosed with COVID today, but news has shown that you can create the chemical to heal yourself. And don't worry if you have COVID, you'll be just fine. I wonder what impact that would have had on the world if that was the messages that we were currently like receiving during that time. Because I remember the news being on, and it was just a countdown of like how many deaths from COVID there were.
Yeah, a live ticker, like
Mhm.
increasing the whole time, like we're watching a sporting game or like,
Yeah. And it's just like that number keeps going up, and you're like, how is this helping? Like,
yeah,
it's not getting rid of COVID cases. It's not getting rid of any other illnesses. Like addiction rates actually spiked during COVID.
wow,
There were more
yeah,
people who were addicted and battling addictions than that had COVID at that time, but you don't hear about that.
not really. I remember hearing about like abuse, how abuse went up, because that now everyone's at home and not at work, and you have a husband and wife that don't get along anyway, or the husband's angry or she whatever, but now they're together all day long in a house and things are already bad. I heard that that is one of the
Mhm.
things that went up there. They were, and alcohol was a part of that. So it
Yeah.
makes sense that addiction went up.
Yeah, and I mean, you also had a lot of people dabbling in other substances like stimulants and psychedelics because you're in a house all day for an indefinite amount of time. What are you gonna do? Um, so a lot of people turn to substances for that, and then that's where
Yeah,
abuse came from, and the way the brain works with the substances, they each substance is different in how it affects the neurotransmitters in your brain. And the effect is so strong that you're trying to find that balance in the neurotransmitters. So once you get a flood of, let's say, dopamine, you're not so much interested in the substance that delivers the dopamine to you. You're just seeking the next dopamine rush. So that's where the addiction comes from, is it is that's what it does to the brain. The substance alters the neurotransmitters and it can become very addictive because a lot of the substances affect the reward pathway in your brain. And once that's stimulated, the natural human response is like, oh, I can do this again. This is okay for me to do. And so you keep doing that habit.
yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way. This is okay for me to do it.
Yeah.
It's kind of the dopamine is overriding the negative aspect or the toxic aspect of it, because your brain is like, this is actually great, man. This is
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
And that's why a lot of people who have addictions tend to not think about anything else. So it gives the appearance that, like, oh, they don't care about their kids or their work. And it's like their brain is now hardwired to look for the next dopamine hit. And that's all that their brain really has space for. Because once that pathway has been rewarded and is now flooded with dopamine, that's like the best sensation to them. And so nothing else matters when they are in that state.
wow, that makes a lot of sense. What was I want to ask you this in case somebody listening is struggling with that, some kind of substance abuse. What was the way I heard you describe it? And maybe it was just this simple of a transition, but you went from the entertainment industry, okay, burnout, okay, drinking, and then you tune into yoga, sound bath, and it seemed like you would just naturally started being drawn to the sound healing instead of drinking. Was it, or do you drink? Are you sober now? Like, is it like, did you make a decision that like, okay, I did. I'm just curious if you did too or not. And then, like, was there a challenge for you? Was it challenging for you to transition? Or I would just love if someone's going through that for them to kind of hear a little bit of your story about how, you dealt
Sure.
with it, confronted it, took it on and transformed it.
Yeah. Happy to share that. So it started with, working in entertainment, uh, and the bar was right there. go and have a few drinks, and it became a way to, like, one, it was kind of satisfying because I was one of the only females that would go and drink with the guys. And so I noticed that in the workplace that gained me more respect from them, which
Mm.
is a little weird, but that's how it was at the time. And so then it was kind of like it was a thing that bonded us. And then I would go home and I'm like, well, I'm home now. And what do I do? I guess Netflix and chill and drink wine or beer, whatever alcohol I had in the house. And then I would often pass out on the couch and then wake up at some point in the night and be like, oh, I guess it's time to like go to the bed. Um, and that was the cycle. I would just do that, wake up, repeat, and come home, drink, Netflix, couch, bed. And at some point, I caught myself as it was happening. I was like, this can't be healthy for me. Like, why am I doing this? Like, I hate hangovers. I would get really bad hangovers too. Um, so
Did
I
that happen all the like throughout the whole time you drank, or okay, it did. So even whenever you first started, that are you already had bad hangovers.
Yeah, like when I first started, I had maybe like a year or two where I didn't have bad hangovers and it was great. And then after that, like just really knocked me out hangovers the next day, depending on how much I drank. Like I could be in bed like all the next day, unless, I had to go to work and then I would make myself go to work. Um, so once I started doing yoga, and they talked a lot in the teacher training about just maintaining a healthier lifestyle and what that would look like, being more conscious of the foods you eat, eating more organic, less processed foods. And they would talk about alcohol and how it really does have a negative effect on your hormones, um, and the effect that it can have on your brain. And it's like rewiring your brain in a sense. Um, and
Wow.
I just remember thinking like, I've been wanting to cut back on my drinking, so maybe this yoga avenue will be a great way for me to start working on that, because I had a lot of shame in it, and I would always downplay it when my, friends or people would ask me about it. I'd be like, yeah, well, I didn't drink that much. Or like, oh, I only had like 2 or 3 drinks last night, so it's not that bad. And but if you're having 2 or 3 drinks every night, you've you do have to look at that as a problem. Um,
Hmm.
and I wasn't willing to do that at that point because there is a stigma that's attached to addiction. And a lot of times it's if you're addicted to something, you're a junkie or you're worthless. And that's really sad and unfortunate. But due to that, I wasn't wanting to talk about it. So I didn't even share that with the people that I was in my yoga teacher training with. And I just took it on for myself and was like, okay, you know what? How about when I'm home and I get the urge to drink, what if I turn on some music and just start doing yoga and let myself move through why I want to drink? And I actually had a lot of self realizations doing that, and so much that I just had a journal that lived by my mat at home. And anytime I was on there, and because I had the urge to drink, I would ask myself, like, why do I want to have a glass of wine right now? What am I hoping to get from it? And sometimes it was, oh, it's the habit. I've ingrained this physical thing that when I come home and I sit on the couch to watch TV, I have a drink in my hand. Um, and then once I got past the habit, the habitual aspect of it, it started to go deeper into the emotions of not feeling fulfilled with the work that I was doing, and I was using it to
Hmm.
numb. And then that, brought up other issues from my past. And alcoholism is a part of my family. So that, came into play for me. And if you have a family member who's addicted to alcohol, you're 50 more times likely to be at some point in your life, because that is also
Mm.
what you've known and what you've been shown as an example. Um, and then the more and more yoga I started to do and started to get into the sound healing aspects of it as well, the more I noticed my body was becoming very sensitive to alcohol. And I remember I was at a festival with one of my friends, like a group of us, and one of my friends looked at me and she's like, "Hey, if I get a cocktail, will you share it with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, I don't drink a lot, but like, I could split a cocktail with you." Because at this point, I've already decreased my drinking a lot.
Hmm.
Um, and she comes back, and I think she got a margarita, and I took one sip and I started to feel nauseous. And I remember handing it back to her. I was like, "I'm sorry. I know I said that I would share this with you, but like, I have to listen to my body, and I'm feeling very nauseous just from that. So like, I can't."
Wow.
Uh, so then it became a part of me where I was just like, yeah, alcohol does not fit. It does not help my body anymore, and I'm not going to push myself to drink something if it doesn't feel good, because therefore I'm not enjoying it if it doesn't feel good, and then I know I'm going to get a bad hangover. Um, and so for me, it was like not long after that, I did like stop drinking alcohol entirely. And so now I'm to the point where if I do have an alcoholic beverage, it is to celebrate something, and it's very rare, and it's typically with family to like toast an event. Um, and it's only one glass, because after one glass of whatever it is, I can start to feel it. And sometimes, like actually now, whenever I do, I'm like, can you just pour me like half? Like, because
Yeah.
I'm so sensitive to it. And I do time it as well, so that I'm doing it in a time in which I don't have clients after, like for the next day, so that I can just process that in my body, so then I don't have it in my system the next time I meet with someone.
It's very powerful. Yeah. Very, very powerful. It- what do you think? Let me just recap this because I have a very similar experience of you with alcohol, where I used to like when I was in the military, and post after that, college, I used to party hard, like a lot of alcohol. I could split a bottle with one guy, and that was a normal thing, you know?
Yeah, and that's a lot.
That's a lot. If I drank a half a bottle of alcohol right now, I'd probably die. There's no way my system could handle that. So it's crazy to think like how you can condition yourself, or a person can condition themselves to alcohol, and it's toxic and poison. It always was. And then you get to a point where you're like, you recondition yourself to not drink it.
Yeah.
And then you got to a point where it's like, wow, one sip of this margarita and I'm nauseous now. Like it's a whole different chemical environment internally that you put that
Mhm.
in. And um, what do you think that is? Is it just as simple as conditioning and then reconditioning yourself? Or it's like, why do you get so sensitive to it after a certain point? Because I got there as well. The last time I drank, it's been 3 years now since I've drank at all. And the last time I drank, holy shit. It was like, I am never doing this. It was so bad. Like I was hungover. I missed the whole next day. It was like, I can't even move. This is so bad. And I caught COVID. It was like,
Your immune system was already down and COVID crept in.
exactly. Yeah, I traveled the whole world during COVID. No mask. I'm like, let's have some fun. Let's go to the concert, whatever, wherever I can go. And then I got to this point where I was emotionally in a weird place and got really drunk with some friends on New Year's Day. And yeah, that's exactly what I realized. Like The alcohol dropped my guard. COVID came in so easily. Is it that simple? It's like conditioning yourself to get used to alcohol, conditioning yourself to get sober, then you put alcohol back in and it doesn't work? Or is there something else that goes on that like makes it so that your body's just like, no, we're not doing this anymore?
Yeah, it's different for every person. Because if you are really heavily addicted to alcohol and you drink a lot, uh, when alcohol withdrawal can be lethal when you try to go cold turkey, because of what your system is now trying to do. Your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system are now trying to regulate itself without this substance. And alcohol is a depressant, so it's slowing down your heart rate and your breathing. So when you remove it completely, it's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to start
Mm,
increasing um, your heart rate as well. And what happens when our heart rate is beating really fast, we tend to experience anxiety or anxiousness or frustration because it's that emotional response that comes with the heart beating really fast. Um, so then you can work yourself up from there. And so if you don't have like the proper tools and the care to withdraw with more ease, uh, it can be very painful and, like I said earlier, it can be lethal. So it all depends on how much alcohol a person drinks regularly. Uh, and for some people, it is really hard to make that change for themselves and to recondition themselves. There is a theory called the change theory when it comes to addiction, and that is the idea that if you were to go to an alcoholic and offer them a drink and say, you can have this drink, like it's on me, don't worry about it, but if you drink it, I have to kill you. And right then they have to choose alcohol or their life. And the argument of the change theory is that if the motivation for change is really powerful, more often than not, they're going to choose the change. They're going to choose their life. Uh, and that's not always the case because it does shift your neurotransmitters. It throws off the chemicals in your body. So your body is used to functioning with alcohol. So your body becomes physically dependent upon it. So that at that point it can be much harder, and that's where things like the 12-step programs or addiction recovery centers can come in, so you can have support to work through that, where you'll also be given, therapy during that time as well, and medicine to help ease the detox symptoms too. uh,
yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say this. So for some people, it can be as simple as like what it was for you and I. We made that choice and we started to notice it. And there's also a theory that as you start to raise your own personal energetic vibration, because everything in life has an energetic vibration. So even alcohol has an energetic vibration. And it is, I can't remember its actual hertz level, but its vibrational level is actually very low. So when you raise your personal vibration and it starts to become higher than what you would consider normal, adding a substance that is way below normal is going to have an adverse effect. So that's probably why when you drank on New Year's Eve with your friends, the next day you're like, "Whoa, I can't handle this."
It's not a
Because
fit anymore.
yeah, because you had already shifted your energy so much to the opposite side from what alcohol was.
I think there's something to that. Yeah. I think that wherever you're at, there's a great book, Power versus Force,
Mm,
that breaks down this energy chart of the
Oh, yeah.
emotions. You've
Yeah.
seen that, yeah, all the way from shame at the bottom to enlightenment at the top, and then everything in between. And there's this point where it goes from like negative energy to like a more positive energy.
Yeah.
And I think that wherever you're vibrating consistently, you can't tolerate anything below that.
Mhm.
Whether it's like if you're vibrating at like a level of peace constantly, like I'm a peaceful person. This is where I'm at. And you come across anger or somebody angry, like you're gonna figure out a way to just remove yourself from that kind of energy because
Yeah.
you're just not there anymore. So yeah, maybe there's something to that. I wonder too, and this is probably like a whole different conversation, I think. And this is like, I think an exception. If this is even true, I don't know a lot about it, but I have heard that there's certain alcohol that has like a psychedelic or like a healing type of effect that's used, by like shaman. And again, I may be just completely talking out of my ass on this one. So you guys listening, just take it as such and go go figure this out for yourself. But I've heard that there's an alcohol that's used to facilitate transformation too. Do you know anything about that or
I've heard similar things. I don't know the name of that alcohol, but that's
yeah.
something. So as I've been studying this stuff more, uh, alcohol was introduced more in a ceremonial setting with
Okay.
shamans like that's where it started initially. Um, and then once other cultures, come in, it's like you have this substance. Oh, it makes me feel great. I don't care about anything. So then you start using it more, and then it becomes socially acceptable. When you think about it, alcohol is the most socially acceptable and commonly used substance to bond between people. Like
Hmm.
people were always like, "Come on, let's go have a drink. Let's go to happy hour or let's go bar hopping." And that's socially acceptable, but you don't hear people going like, "Oh, let's go sit and drink some ayahuasca together." Uh,
Yeah.
some people will do that and they'll plan that, but uh, that's way less common. And I don't think you'd want to drink ayahuasca on a common basis, but
Yeah, happy hour. Let's do ayahuasca happy hour.
ayahuasca tea shots for everyone.
At lunch, let's go. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, the culture that has been propped up around alcohol. Like
Mhm.
it's everywhere. Like you were describing work and then going across the street, there's a bar right there. But that's the culture. And
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
phrases like liquid courage, go get your liquid courage and you can go talk to that girl. Guys will say that, or I just got to ease my nerves a little bit, or you're going to go dance without drinking. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's so embedded.
Yeah.
We were in Nashville very briefly this week. We just drove through there, had brunch. I don't know if you ever been to Nashville?
I haven't been, but I've heard a lot about it. I have some friends that live down there.
Holy shit. This is my first time to Nashville. And we were only there for 90 minutes. So we were in and out pretty
Oh,
quickly.
wow.
But 10 a.m., we got there at 10. We left Memphis at 5 a.m., got to Nashville and went to had brunch. They opened at 10. Nashville is a party city. It's like a variation of Vegas in terms of how people go hard. Someone's going to write me back and be like, don't compare Nashville. Yeah, right. Here's what we saw at 10 in the morning in Nashville. Those bike taxi things that have
Oh, yeah.
like a keg or something on it and everyone's biking themselves around and drinking. We
Mhm.
saw we saw three or four of those go by, different groups of people at 10 in the morning, smashed already, like drinking the morning away. And then we saw it there was an option on brunch. I don't think this is unique, but uh like it was a bottomless mimosa for like 25 bucks. And you could just feel like the brunch experience. And I remember this from drinking too and doing brunches Saturday mornings is like it all revolves around alcohol. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
so much that's been propped up, alcohol at the center, and then all this fun stuff propped up around it, whether it's the bikes thing or it's brunch or it's a DJ or a concert. There's so much that's propped on top of alcohol. And I think if we really get honest, it's like, what's the real drive? Like, are we going to do this to numb out, unconsciously and like, yes, bottomless mimosa, let's go. I just find it fascinating how much industry has been built up around it throughout
Yeah.
the world.
Well, and that's a big form of money. And
Yeah,
when you go to shows at a bar, like there's often a minimum, like 2 drink minimum. And
true. A comedy show, even 2 drink minimum here in Denver.
yeah, and it's similar in San Diego. I feel like at least here, people are starting to move away from that. But you still encounter that regularly. And it's a huge industry, the alcohol industry. And also, like, a lot of health problems can stem from alcohol, as they often do. And so, if you're keeping people sick, then you're sending them to the hospitals. And that in America, healthcare is a for profit industry, which is really sad.
Yeah, it is. That it's a weird system that we have. It's really sick care, not health care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I love that, like on a positive. Sorry, what was that?
I was just gonna say, yeah, you're not sick. Why are you here? We don't, you're fine.
We got beds to fill. It's like
Yeah.
it's similar to a hotel model, I think. I'm not an expert at the business model, but a hotel has beds that they need people to stay in those beds and pay for those beds. Same with the hospital. Hospital gets built up, these huge, big, sexy hospitals, and there are beds and rooms that need to be filled, and we need patients. So it's kind of, I think it's obvious what's going on with that. Should be. And on a positive note, I think it has shifted. There's a movement to sobriety, and this the big industry. I don't know if it's big industry, but a industry has been built and is growing around non-alcoholic
Yeah.
drinks, not non-alcoholic wines, non-alcoholic beers. There's even some non-alcoholic liquors.
Yeah.
And I have a client who runs an extremely successful nightclub in California, and he's sober and runs this amazing nightclub. And he said that alcohol sales are dipping, like significantly dipping this year. So that's kind of exciting to see that people are embracing. Even
Mhm.
there's some like sobriety like type bars that everything they sell is non-alcoholic.
Yeah. There's a big sobriety curious movement, like, which is really exciting because I think people are, it's the first step of many for people to take control of their own health again and to realize that they have a choice of what they put in their body, and what they put in their body affects how they function. Um, so it is really nice to see that. I went to uh, the festival Lightning in a Bottle in, it was the first year they did it after the pandemic. So I think that was 2022. And they had a full like bar area where they were offering non-alcoholic elixirs,
Mm.
and that was like my favorite place. I like sat there and had like 3 different types of drinks just the first time that I discovered it, because it was so novel. But they had a full bar, like a brick and mortar bar in Nevada City, California. And so that was their contribution to the festival, was to like bring some of their offerings to it.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I dig that. I dig that movement. Now
Hmm.
we just have to be careful that we don't substitute the alcohol for sugar, because that's what happened with the fat-free movement. Let's take the fat out because fat is bad for you, and then sugar. we overloaded food with sugar. I see that. I had a cider. I usually don't order those drinks because of I
Hmm.
usually just go water. But
Yeah.
my business coach this weekend, we went out, he ordered this cider. It looked really good. I was like, I'll try one of those ciders. But I'm always curious, like, how much sugar is in this thing? Like, is this going to give me diabetes tonight if I drink this? You know what I mean? Am I one drink away from diabetes? And then we just get the water. But I know there's some that aren't, but I think we just have to be cautious about that.
Yeah. And
What do you
that's,
think?
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to transition to something else, but so go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
Uh, I was gonna say that's something that we do need to be careful about because I've also transitioned to eating way less sugar than I used to. And looking at the labels, like I've done periods of time where I've had no added sugar. And that meant that you had to look at the labels, check and see if there was added sugar, and then read all the ingredients to see if they like snuck it in. And sugar's
Yeah,
in so many things. They find a way to put it in like salad dressings, in bread. It's really shocking once you start looking at it. But yeah,
it
all
it
comes
is.
down to being aware and deciding what it is that you want to do and how you want to take control of it for yourself.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said about what the yoga teacher training was when they were teaching you guys about being healthy and staying away from processed foods. Like
Mhm.
it's almost a pretty fair bet that you can make that if something is processed, and whether it's ketchup, hot sauce or whatever, there's probably a decent amount of sugar and probably some other things in there that are just completely unnecessary. So I think the more we can move to fewer ingredients, probably better off.
Yeah, I agree.
Tell me this, because I love your story from transitioning from the entertainment industry in the hub of entertainment of LA down to a little more chill San Diego, uh, from a corporate type of job, not traditional corporate, but to burnout and and then into this whole new world of helping people emotionally create behavior change, working with in addiction, um, working with people with cancer. I mean, you're doing so much cool stuff. It's such a different life if you compared it side by side, I think, from having a job, the job that you had. And there are a lot of people facing that right now. And I know that an event like this attracts people like that who may be facing that or already transitioned but not quite made it yet. What would you say were some of the God? Because I just think, what if you stay that path, right? Like how far down that path of burnout can you go, right? And you didn't go, like you made the shift. But if someone's facing that right now, what were some of the more insightful things that you're grateful about that helped you transition out of that job and into a brand new life that you're living now?
Yeah, powerful question. Uh, one of the things when I was experiencing burnout, so I used to, I'm not going to say which studio, but I worked at one of the six big studios in LA. Um, for their entertainment production department, and it was a lot of work doing events and putting on, themed entertainment stuff. And it was things that I did enjoy, but at a time I just started to feel like I was being taken for granted by the company. And it was like, oh, well, no matter what state the project's in, if you put Kathryn on it, she'll fix it up and like bring it back from, the brink of death. And so I would a lot of times get projects that were starting to fail or not going the way in which it was anticipated, and they'd be like, so here was the plan and here's what it is, so if you could just like take it back to the plan. And I'm like, we got to throw that plan out the window. We can get to the end goal, but we can't do the plan anymore. um, and after just countlessly doing that so many times, it takes a toll on you. and you're putting in long hours, and um it's a little bit different when you're getting paid hourly, because then you go into overtime and double time and triple time, and I was in triple time so much that I ended up getting put into temporarily salaried, and so it didn't matter how much I worked, I was getting the same
Mm.
rate every week. And that's kind of where the burnout started to come from. And I remember talking to one of my friends who also worked there, and he was in a different department, and we would kind of share just how we felt about our respected departments and our job and where the disconnect was coming from. And I would always tell him, and he was like, don't let your work define you. And I'm like, yeah, but I work so much, and it is a big part of my life. So whatever I'm doing, I want to love it. And I was like, if this is what it's going to be, I'd rather be poor and happy than not have this job. And I would repeatedly say that I'd rather be poor and happy than have this money that I can't do anything with because I'm working. And um, that was a big motivating factor for me, because I'd had a parent who didn't like his job. And every day he would take me to school as a kid, and he'd be like, he's like, well, I'm still alive. And
Mm.
it I just every day I kind of like, one, that's insulting, like I'm a kid and like you could be alive for your children, but you're just like miserable that you're alive, okay. Um and I also took that as something that I never wanted to aspire to. I was like, I never want to be ungrateful that I'm alive, and whatever I fill my day with is something I want to enjoy. I want to love what I'm doing. And when I started to become, because I was doing entertainment, I had stopped working for that company and started a freelance company where I was working for a variety of different companies on a variety of different projects, from, theme parks in Abu Dhabi to theater shows on ships. And that was fun. And then that's the time period that I started teaching yoga, and the interactions that I was having with the students and the people that were coming to my yoga classes lit me up way more than the work that I was doing in entertainment. And there came a moment for me. I was on a project working on a specific attraction for a theme park that was being built in Abu Dhabi. And I took that job knowing that there was going to be a time where I had to relocate to Abu Dhabi when we were ready for on-site rehearsals and to start running the shows. Uh, and at the same time, I started getting more and more jobs to work at different yoga studios in LA, and that was way more interesting to me. And I'm like, and I took the job for Abu Dhabi really as a resume credit for my entertainment career. And I'm like, I don't
Mm.
want to live in Abu Dhabi, but
Yeah.
everyone I know is going to Abu Dhabi and working on these entertainment projects. And so I can be part of the club. I can be part of the crew that did that worked on this park. Um, and they kept pushing back when we had to leave, as is very common in these entertainment projects. And I was like, well, I'm going to need notice because I work at 5 different studios and I'm going to have to get all of my classes covered for months. And
Mm.
I was like, so I need notice. And then we had, then one day we had a meeting with our on site producer who was in Abu Dhabi, and the producer of the project, and then me as the production manager. And it was the three of us. And the producer on site is like, okay, well, we need you guys here in a week. And we're like, no, we can't do that. Like,
Mm.
we need more time to just get our life here in America situated before we can up and leave. Like, we knew that it was coming. We're not fighting you on going. We need like at least 3 weeks to get things prepped. And like, that's why we kept telling you we needed a timeline and you needed to give us a date that couldn't be a week from now.
Mm.
And so then that just like, I got off the phone, I got off that meeting. My direct producer called me and she's like, well, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel like I'm not going to go. And she's like, what? And I was like, I can't make a week work. And she's like, yeah, no, I'm going to fight this. And I was like, okay, you can fight that. And she was having her own meetings with the internal company. And I just really sat with myself. I was like, well, this is the moment of choice for me
Yeah.
because if I leave, I was supposed to be there scheduled for 3 months. And as these projects go, I knew it was going to end up being somewhere between 4 to 5 months. And I'm like, if I leave for, you know, 3 to 5 months, am I going to be able to pick up with the same momentum that I have in the wellness industry? Are those yoga studios going to welcome me back? Or are they just going to fill the position? Like if I were a business owner, I would have filled it because like I
100%.
wait indefinitely for someone to come back.
Yeah, you gotta feel it.
Yeah. And that's when I just like sat with myself and I was like, I have to walk off this project.
Mm.
Can't finish it. And I looked at like what that meant for my contract, the amount of pay that was left. And I was like, okay, I'm forfeiting like a few months of pay and the bonus for completion. And I was like, but you know what? They can use that money to find a replacement for me. And I was like, if I have to, I will forfeit 1 month of pay so that I can train someone. And that's what I ended up doing.
Wow.
I had a meeting with my one friend who I would commiserate with when I worked at that production company. I like went to his place, we talked, and he's like, "Well, if this is like what you want to do, like I support you, and like you don't need anyone to support you, like you got to feel it." Um, and then I just went in my car after I left his place because I had a time to meet to call the producer because time zones. So I told her first, I was like, I need to step off this project. I just can't. And I was like, I'm falling way too in love with yoga and all the work that I've been doing with Reiki. And I really am using this as an avenue to shift my career. And if I go to Abu Dhabi, it's going to mess me up, like in terms of the momentum I have. And I'm honestly not going to deliver a great product. And I'm going to be angry every day that I'm there. And I don't want to do that to myself.
Powerful.
I don't want to do that to the team. And so then I called the next day. I went in, talked to the show producer who would have been traveling with me and told her. And she just like, I expected her to get really mad. And she was just like, okay, that sucks. And she's like, this makes it harder. And she's like, would you be willing to train in a replacement? I was like, of course. And I was like, I already have someone in mind. And I already reached out to them yesterday and they're available for this.
Wow.
So, yeah, luckily it was someone who had worked on the project very early on for a rehearsal. Um, so he already had one signed the NDA and was, 10 years younger than me. So I was like, if he can go to Abu Dhabi and work on this show and finish it, this is going to launch his career even further. Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
so I was like, let's give it to somebody who's going to like relish in this experience. Um, so that's what happened. And as advice for anyone who's going through that change, I would, one, ask yourself, do you like what you're currently doing? And how much do you like what it is that you're thinking about doing? And play the tape both ways. Like, how would you feel if you stayed where you were? And then how would you stay where you're looking to move? What excites you more? And go with that. And know that it's not going to be an easy path necessarily. It will have moments of challenges that make you question, like, why did I do this? Is this the right thing? And for me, I use those moments as times where I can get stronger. Um, because after the pandemic hit, I was, I pre-pandemic, I was like, I did it. I figured out a way to work in LA at all these different yoga studios and hosting uh, events regularly where I could have enough to pay rent and bills and then also have some left over, which is really hard to do in LA. And then
Mhm.
the pandemic came and studios shut down. So at that point, it was a question of like, okay, well, how do I reinvent myself from here? And that was an unexpected challenge that not many people in the US, I think, expected that we were going to experience. Um, and I'm really thankful that I don't work in entertainment any, like, to the degree in which I did. I still take on occasional jobs and projects with entertainment that I am excited about. And I'm actually working on one right now as well. And having the yoga and the wellness practice that I have gives me the freedom to not have to take every single entertainment project that comes my way. And also, a lot of my entertainment contacts know that I don't work in that industry very much, so they will really only contact me with things that they think are unique for me. And then I'll like consider it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I do want to do that. Thank you.
Cool. You get to pick and choose.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's knowing that there could be a challenge ahead of you and just being ready to face it, because ultimately your happiness and your health are the most important things that you will ever have. And your health is your wealth. Because if you're not physically healthy or mentally or emotionally healthy, you're not going to be able to put your all into what it is that you're
Mm.
doing. And you're going to show up uh, not as your complete self for those people in your life. And it's really important to fill up your cup first before you start to fill up and help other people in your life.
Powerful. Love that. This says what you just shared. Thanks for walking us through that. You have such a strong character. I want to really acknowledge you for that. The fact that you realized the most truth, what was most true for you, that no, I'm not actually going to go to Abu Dhabi. You were able to have the foresight to know how that's going to play out for you, but also for the team if you're pissed off all the time. And then, but your character is, I'm going to find someone to replace me and train them. And then you took the initiative to have that conversation with that guy and be prepared to present it to the your boss or whoever it was that was leading. So that says a lot about your character. And I just want to highlight that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me say this. Let's wrap it. And for anybody, I want people to be able to connect with you and come into your world. And so for those people that are listening that are like, yes, I want some of Kathryn, how you're offering a gift, and that gift is how they can come into your world and then interact with you, however is going to be the right way to do that. So can you just, I'll link, when I send this interview out, I'll put a link to it, but can you talk just briefly about what you're giving?
So the gift is a 16-minute sound therapy meditation. And what that's going to do is it's going to use different frequencies. I play the crystal bowls and a few other various instruments throughout it. And as we were talking earlier, those frequencies will start to shift your energetic and emotional vibration. And you can also use it as a good tool. Like, I think a lot of times when people say start meditating, people get turned off because we think like, oh, I got to meditate for like an hour and I don't have an hour. So this is 16 minutes. You can find 16 minutes in your day somewhere, find a quiet space. I would recommend using headphones for this meditation, unless you have like a really great speaker system like Sonos or Bose, and play the meditation. Just take a few breaths before you start it because it goes right into the sound. And if
Cool.
you have a question or something weighing on your mind, your heart, you can go into the meditation just with that as your intention to get a little clarity or to find peace or relaxation. And you can practice with closing your eyes and just like sitting still. You can even lay down if you'd like. I prefer to lay down when I listen to sound meditations myself. And sometimes, especially if you're new to meditating and have ADD or ADHD, it can be really hard to close your eyes and to focus, and be still for 16 minutes. So you can have a journal and you can let yourself write in whatever thoughts come through and just let yourself be open to receive the experience, because any possible number of things could happen. You could feel energy moving in your body. You could um, get some insight as to how to move forward with something in your life, or you could just feel very relaxed and at ease. So let yourself be open to receive what comes through. And I'm always happy to talk about it and decompress with people. I would love to know what everyone thinks of the sound meditation and how they responded to it. So you can reach out to me. You can either email me at info@eiplyoga.com, or you can find me on Instagram at Eipl Healing. So that's EIPL Healing. And um, at this point, so many people are probably like, what does E.I.P.L stand for? And that
Yeah.
means every individual person is love healing. And I wanted to bring that back to love and to the individual because of what I noticed when I started to get into the health and wellness space is a lot of people were just clumping people together of like, oh, well, they have depression. These people have anxiety. These people have an eating disorder. So, like, this is the care that they need. And for each of those groups. And I believe that we are all individuals. We all have our own set of experiences, our own set of memories. We've gone through our own uh, traumas. And so those do need to be looked at as the whole. Like those things are in our energy field, as we were talking about earlier. And so if you're not addressing what's in the energy field, you're not actually going to clean that out and remove it. It's still
Mm.
going to be latched on to part of you somewhere. Um, so with my practice, it's my goal and my purpose is to have a different way of working with every single person. Um, there's a basic structure, but it's not a cookie cutter program, one size fits all. And because we've all had our own experiences as human nature too, we're seeking love. We're looking for love, acceptance, to just feel safe. And love provides that, whether that's a romantic love, platonic love, or self-love with from ourselves. So that's really the goal of getting people into a place where they can feel comfortable loving themselves and also open up to receiving love from other people.
I love it. I love it. Every individual person is love healing. Beautiful.
And that's also my website, iplhealing.com. So you can check out all the other offerings there. And then there's also a contact form on there. So if you get lost, you can always just go eiplhealing.com and go to the contact us and then fill that out.
Kathryn, awesome. Thank you so much. I love the way you present. You're so grounded, present. You're down to get into the granular and make it, you know, talk about and hit the points that need to be hit. So yeah, I really love your story. Acknowledge you for the beautiful transition that you made, and the beautiful work that you're doing. And then for everybody watching, yeah, you guys, a very special person makes it to the end of an interview like this, and it means that something probably opened up for you. Right? Otherwise, you would have tuned out. You would have saw the Instagram note and bounced. So if something opened for you, trust that and take action. Go grab the meditation and
Absolutely.
then do the meditation. Don't just go do it. And if you feel called to go further, listen, because I think one of the threads I got was how powerfully, Kathryn, you listen to yourself throughout your journey. And ultimately, that's what's created this new path for you. So I want to just share that with everybody listening. I know you had a hard stop right now. I think we're right there on the exact time. So
Yeah.
we'll end it. We'll end it here. Everybody at home, go take action, and we'll see everybody soon.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.